Before it began, Aldnoah.Zero was a series I was pretty hyped for, mainly due to its staff. It was apparently being written by one of my favorites, Gen Urobuchi of Madoka Magica, Psycho Pass, and Fate Zero, plus being directed by aOki of Fate Zero and Kara no Kyokai, all wrapped up with a soundtrack by Hiroyuki Sawano of Attack on Titan, and being produced by the not that bad A1 Pictures. So, to sum up, you've got a good writer, a good director, a good composer, and a good production studio. What could go wrong? Well, first off, Urobuchi is only tangentially related to the series. He penned the first 3 episodes and created a very general framework for the plot, but as a whole, Aldnoah.Zero was written by Katsuhiko Takayama, whose resume includes Mirai Nikki, A Tale of Memories, Fullmetal Alchemist, and Boku no Pico. Right, well, putting that aside, what's Aldnoah's plot? The basics are pretty simple. Humanity discovers advanced alien technology on Mars called Aldnoah, resulting in several groups of humans immigrating to Mars. Over a few decades, the Martians start to separate from their Earthling brothers, seeing themselves as superior beings. Tensions rise, and eventually a war ignites between Earth and Mars, ending in a ceasefire and no clear victor. 15 years after that, hostility between the planets has not cooled, but the Martian princess Aselam vs. Elusia embarks on a peacekeeping mission to Earth, hoping to secure a treaty and ensure a better life for all parties. Unsurprisingly, things go south, and war resumes between the Terran and Martian forces, which gives us our story. The strongest part of Aldnoah.Zero that repeatedly delivered even when other areas may or may not have faltered was the soundtrack, brought to us, as I said earlier, by Hiroyuki Sawano, who has composed before and since for Kill la Kill, Attack on Titan, Seraph at the End, and more that I haven't seen, like Guilty Crown, all of which, especially Titan, have good music. Aldnoah.Zero is no exception. Overall, it's everything you could want out of Sawano's soundtrack, so, in a word, epic. It sets a dramatic tone and makes the action feel automatically better just by existing. A lot of the best songs are vocal pieces credited to SawanoHiroyuki and CK Mizuki. I assume Mizuki is the name of the singer, but I had trouble corroborating that assumption. Sawano's influence can even be felt with the opening and ending themes, which, if I'm being honest, are pretty great, especially one of the first season's endings, aLIEz. aLIEz. I think it's aLIEz. Whatever. My only musical complaint is that the use of the soundtrack started to get repetitive. It wasn't anywhere near Kill la Kill's Don't Lose Your Way, but there are definitely a couple tracks that felt overused, such as Keep On Keepin' On. Bodies keep on, bodies find us one now, exciting, I don't want you now, oh I can't cry high. On the opposite end of the presentation spectrum, we have the visuals, and let's be real here, it's A1 Pictures. They're a fairly well-known name. Regardless of how you think their adaptations are or your stance on SAO, it's undeniable they make good-looking anime. Maybe not top tier, but good-looking all the same, which holds true this time. Even the mechs, which are exclusively CG, mesh well with the traditional 2D animation. That's not saying it's indistinguishable from regular animation, because it isn't, but it's not painfully jarring either. I think it's worth mentioning that alongside A1 Pictures, Aldnoah.Zero is co-produced by a new company called Troika. Normally I wouldn't think much of this, but Troika recently worked on their first independent series, Sakurako-san, which if nothing else is a rather pretty show, so it makes you wonder how significantly Troika contributed to Aldnoah.Zero's relatively high-quality visuals. And with that, we are done discussing the technical and musical presentation, and we'll move on to the more controversial elements, which are, by process of elimination, the plot and characters. Starting with one of the biggest, Inaho Kaizuka, a teenage Earth soldier and the hero of this tale. I'm a weird one in that I actually liked Inaho as a character, while many other people apparently did not. I liked him because in this modern era of either whiny and fearful or brash and hot-headed protagonist, Inaho is a refreshing dose of neither. He is in fact characterized by his utter lack of emotion, though to be clear, he is not an emotionless person. He's just not very outspoken about his feelings, favoring a calm, patient approach over anything else, and I'm all for that. A character doesn't need to be spewing his feelings every minute for me to get a sense of where he's coming from and what he's thinking. Unfortunately, since Inaho on the outside is rather flat, his monotone inflection somewhat wastes his voice actor, Natsuke Hanae, who would probably be best known as the very damaged Ken Kaneki of Tokyo Ghoul, as well as your Lion April's Orima Kosei. I would be remiss if at this point I did not mention the other side of Inaho's coin, Slain Troyard. Slain is Inaho's opposite in more ways than one, and the plot more or less serves to fuel their rivalry. Where Inaho is cool and collected, Slain gets worked up and emotional. Despite being of Earthling birth, Slain is a Martian soldier and good friend of the princess, and is probably hoping to be more, if you know what I mean. Opinions on Slain are almost as varied as opinions on Inaho, because while you could be sympathetic to his plight and repeated bad luck, he makes some really infuriating decisions. As for me, at the beginning I thought Slain was fine. Over time, not so much, because the logic and motivations behind his actions seemed a little too strange or didn't particularly jive with his character. But on the whole, the Inaho vs. Slain rivalry, while not exceptional, was functional, as well as being the foundation for a pseudo-love triangle between Inaho, Slain, and the princess. That rivalry comes to a peak at the show's halfway point, the finale of the first season. Obviously I won't spoil what transpires, but at the time, before season 2 began, I was very impressed by Aldnoah.Zero's mid-series finale, and it left me eager for more. The unfortunate ending to this story is that the second season did not deliver, for a multitude of reasons which I will lay out shortly. Before that, though, I feel obligated to touch on some other characters besides Inaho and Slain, but I really don't have anything to say. Pretty much everyone was competent or functional, but that's all they were. Didn't hate them, didn't love them. Not much point in me coming up with some half-ass spiel about the extended cast neither you nor I will enjoy, so let's just move on. While I liked Inaho as a character, I hated him as a plot device. Initially, his calm demeanor lets him quickly think through combat situations without being hampered by fear or panic, which in turn allows him to outsmart most Martian mecha thrown his way. I can buy this. He's a smart guy placed in a life-threatening situation without really anyone to back him up. I'm sure he'd be able to puzzle out a path to victory. The problems come in as the show keeps going and starts treating Inaho as some sort of battlefield god, with even the professional soldiers and military higher-ups treating him as an automatic ace in the hole. Eventually, he gives up all pretense of even trying to pretend Inaho won't win. It becomes a foregone conclusion that he will triumph simply because of who he is and certain technology he wields, which dampens the enjoyment to be had, especially when a big driving force of the series is a rivalry between him and Slain. If Inaho is a practical god of victory, what do you think that does to Slain's chances? A lack of suspense is only one problem that Aldnoah faces, and the other is that the ending, for lack of more elegant terms, wasn't all that great. A lot of the conflicts were resolved disappointingly fast, and with the help of a character that had only been introduced a few episodes prior, likely specifically in order to serve as a tool in wrapping up the story. To be fair, it's not a bad ending that plot threads were left hanging or anything like that, it just felt rather unsatisfying. To me, at least. The way characters end up, the way everything gets tied together so neatly, it's all just a bit meh. Of course, as always, my commitment to avoid spoilers, this point shall remain vague, but let it be known that Aldnoah is not a series I will remember for its ending. Maybe the finale of the first season, but not the actual overall ending. However, neither of those issues are Aldnoah.Zero's largest offense. You see, the series has a problem with being fundamentally unable to simply stick to its big plot moments. It'll do a whole dramatic, surprising, unexpected plot thing, and more often than not, backpedal on that development the very next episode. Usually this comes in the form of, "This character is dead!" Oh, wait. No, they aren't. You know what I mean, the kind of aggravating fake out that only exists to temporarily excite the audience by pretending that something unexpected or meaningful has actually occurred, when in fact it has not. At this point, I'm tired of beating around the bush with my complaints, so I'm now going to talk freely about spoilers. If that's a problem for you, click here to just skip to the verdict, because this is the last segment of The Bad. A heads up though, I'm not going to be strongly recommending the series, so spoilers might not be a huge deal anyways, but if you're already planning to watch it, it's not unwatchable, so feel free, and in that case, skip ahead to the verdict. Otherwise, stick around. You have 3 more seconds to make a decision. Okay, everyone's still here. Let me tell you exactly what was so infuriating about Aldnoah.Zero, and I will begin by delving into the Season 1 finale, which I had praised earlier, because, taken on its own, it is deserving of praise. Here's how it plays out. Due to a series of circumstances, Slain, an injured Inaho, the princess, and a somewhat major Martian commander character are in the same room. The Martian commander shoots and kills the princess, leading Slain in his rage to shoot and kill the commander. Once Slain approaches the princess's body, Inaho intervenes, but is executed by Slain via a gunshot to the head, and it cuts the credits almost immediately afterwards. I distinctly remember sitting there in stunned silence, in disbelief that all that had actually happened, that the main cast had been reduced to just Slain, who would presumably go on some sort of solo crusade against one or both sides of the war in the following season. How could I be so naive? The reality, the hilarious groan-inducing reality is that come second season, not one of these characters had actually died, and that the status quo of the first season was maintained. Like, I would have been fine with 1 or even 2 surviving, but all 3 of them, especially Inaho, who had been shot through the eye in the head, is just too hard to swallow. It completely killed any respect I had for the writers because it became abundantly clear that the tragic Red Wedding-esque finale was nothing more than a ploy to build hype for the next season, rather than facilitate any kind of significant plot development. To make matters worse, this was not the first time they'd faked the princess's death. 2 times prior, her character has supposedly been killed off, only to return almost immediately. Admittedly, one of these times is in the series premiere, so you don't buy it and assume she's not actually dead, but beyond that point it comes nothing but lazy writing in an attempt to get cheap thrills out of the viewer. I'm sorry if that came off as too much like a rant, but it really was upsetting to see the writers continuously refuse to stick to their guns. Don't be fooled by the Uro Butcher's presence in the credits. This is far from the likes of Fate Zero and Madoka Magica. It has decent action, a decent soundtrack, and even some kind of decent characters, but where everything falls apart is the writing, especially past the halfway point. I actually liked the first season, but the second season took everything his predecessor set up and made nothing but bad decisions with it, retroactively making the first season worse. And you can't even use the excuse of, well, the manga was better, the anime is just a poor adaptation, like Tokyo Ghoul for example, because there is no manga. Aldnoah.Zero is an original anime production, which means that it's just a lackluster show. There's no excuse, and nothing more to say. So, after taking everything into account as well as my own subjective enjoyment on a scale from F to S, I give Aldnoah.Zero first season B, second season D averages out to a C. I'd say that on the whole, Aldnoah.Zero, while not unwatchable, was rather unremarkable. In fact, for the vast majority of people, I would not recommend Aldnoah.Zero at all, if only because it just gets worse as it goes on, not better. At this point, I might as well mention that while Aldnoah.Zero was airing, I heard a lot of negative comparisons to certain Gundam series, but I'm not a Gundam guy, so that's neither here nor there. I can't comment on something I know nothing about, and therefore have no thoughts on it either way. If you so desire, Aldnoah.Zero is currently available for legal streaming on Crunchyroll and Hulu, as well as the first season being on Netflix. And that'll do it. Thanks for watching, have a great day, leave any feedback in the comments, subscribe if you want more, and if there's anything you'd like to see reviewed, by all means, tell me. In fact, this review was requested by Mon Allison Lomboy. Thanks for the request, and hopefully you were pleased by the result. That is, unless you're a fan of the show, in which case, sorry. Remember that I also have a Twitter if you are so inclined. See you next time.